My name's Eli Delaney, and I have the honor of meeting some pretty cool people. These are the entrepreneurs, the artists, the creatives, the game changers that are making a positive impact in the people that they meet. And I'm a firm believer that the people that you meet can get you anywhere you want to go. And this show is my way of sharing them with you. It's my way of also helping you meet cool people. All right, welcome back, my friends. Eli here, and we are here for another episode of the Meet Cool People Show. Today's guest, he sold his company when he started in his late 20s to another agency, served as a second in command, grew the revenue to almost double in 2 years. He is now a coach helping nonprofits, purpose-driven businesses scale to help them focus on organizing, foster high-performance teams, and create leaders worth following. And he and his wife are on a mission to positively impact 10,000 kids by December 31st, 2033. Today's guest is Kenny Lange. He is somebody that I had the pleasure of meeting more recently at a live event back in January. And then we got reconnected this last week and just had a blast. I'm like, all right, yeah, we got to have a fun show. So Kenny, thanks so much for coming and hanging out today.
Eli, I'm excited to be here. It's going to be fun.
Of course it is. So give us a little bit of history of, how did you get started in all this stuff? I know you're a coach now, you're helping nonprofits. Mm-hmm. What was your journey getting to this point?
Well, I've worked in churches and ministries for the better part of 20 years. So I've always had a tie to the nonprofit, sort of doing good work side of things and communities. However, when I started my agency, my digital marketing agency, and that was, almost 9 years ago, I just wanted to put food on the table. But I also wanted to test out all of these ideas I had about leadership, building a business. What does it mean to grow and to scale? I would read different books, listen to podcasts, consume all these things. And I was working for people that I didn't feel were bringing the best out of me, and also were not really receptive to what I thought were my brilliant ideas, which were really just repackaged somebody else's idea. And so that gave me the chance to test these things out. And it turns out that while I was wrong quite a bit, there were a lot of things I got right and a lot of things I learned. And I really discovered that I loved using my business to build people, because if I did that, then they would build the business. Eventually, there just came a time when it made sense to sell. And while I was working at that other agency that you mentioned, I became their second in command, but I needed a framework to sort of hold everything together. I needed a track to run on to correct things and improve things quickly. And that's when I really discovered a love for facilitation, for some of the more complex frameworks that were out there. And I got to see firsthand the good they could do. As you mentioned, nearly doubled revenue, but we also grew from a single location in one state to 6 states and 4 countries. And I saw that across people and all sorts of biographical information, demographic information, that there are some principles that just stay true. They're timeless. And now what I want to do is help other people discover those things, but bring it out of them. I don't want to tell them what to do, but I want to give them a framework to help bring to the surface and bring intention to the ways they feel that they're supposed to build and lead their organization.
I love it. And, one of the things that you said there that I think is really important is, for me, to me, this is what stands out is you got the frameworks. Mm-hmm. And I personally I love frameworks. I love having a system to go by, because so many people just try to figure it out. They're winging it and they're guessing on what's going on. But if you can build that framework for somebody, it makes a huge difference to make it. It's like, okay, here's the path of what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And it makes it much easier for them to learn it, and much more willing, because they can see what the next steps are going to be.
Yeah. Really, I've joked with people, I haven't put it in any of my marketing, but it seems to resonate, is I want to stop people from committing random acts of growth by helping them turn their purpose into performance. because especially with the nonprofits, you got great intentions. A lot of for-profits, you have great intentions, but you don't know how to translate that into the performance part where it really gets implemented, executed consistently over time. And to your point, I think that's what the frameworks can help us do, is structure our intentions so that they come true.
Awesome. I love it. And so when a client, like, describe an ideal client with you, somebody who's coming to you, and you might even use an example, somebody that you've been working with or you've worked with in the past. When they came to you, obviously they were messed up one way or another. Let's go ahead
Yeah.
and talk about where are they when they come to you, and what are some of the things that you're helping them put in place?
Yeah. I have a couple that would be great examples. One in particular was one of my first clients, and they were actually former colleagues of mine. But they started their own digital marketing agency, and their founder, co-founder, CEO, he's probably one of the best salespeople I've ever encountered. I mean, every cliche applies. The selling ice cubes to Eskimos sort of thing. He could do that, but that came with sort of a downside, right? Every great strength also has a great weakness on the other side of it, and that was they did such a good job of selling and marketing their services that they were beginning to get inundated, just calls, 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 but they didn't have the structure to support the weight of the projects and retainers that they were selling. And so it was around Christmas of 22. I get a text just saying, "Hey, can we talk?" And I was like, "Sure." And we hopped on a call, and he said, "Look, man, I'm drowning. We have so many calls. I feel like I have talented people around me." He goes, "But we feel more like a group of people than a team." And I said, "Okay, well, let's talk about what that means and what we need to get implemented." And the right option for them ended up being implementing the system and soul framework, which is the business or organizational operating system that I help people with, in addition to several others. But they had just closed a year, and they were, again, this was they're at 18 months old, their first full calendar year, 600,000, which was pretty impressive. And then our first year together, they finished a little over 1.3 million. So they nearly doubled their revenue, and they got through the process, lost some people, gained some people. So not only were they growing bigger, but we were trying to grow them healthier. And now for this year and our second full year together, they started at like 7 people. They're up to like 21, maybe 22, and they're on track to finish at 3.4 million. I won't be surprised if when we check in over the summer that they're on track for even more, but they're going to go nearly 6x in 2 years and be in a much healthier state. And the reason that it's such a wonderful success story is, one, they are a for-profit organization, but their CEO has made it very clear that they are a purpose-driven, mission-driven organization, that ultimately what they're there to do is to do good work with good people. So he's using his business to build people, and give them a great place to work, a place that he wish he had more often in his career, which I really respect and admire. But the other thing is, he's a single dad of 3 kids, and his presence as a father has always been important to him. And that was really tough when the business was chaotic. And oddly enough, it's a much larger organization, but it's a lot less chaotic. So he now not only has a thriving business, but he also gets to be more of the parent that he wishes to be.
Awesome. Now, I love the share you share the story with that. Let's go deep into some of this stuff. So if somebody is, I mean, you're talking about like bigger companies, but let's go ahead and go with like a company that might be just 2 people right now, and
Mm-hmm.
they're ready to go for the growth. What are the top like 2, 3 things that maybe they need to be putting in place right away to be prepared for that kind of exponential growth? Because you're making big differences here,
Mm-hmm.
but everybody comes in, and then usually they realize they have a problem after it's already too late. So let's kind of put that
Mm-hmm.
into perspective for them. What can they think of now?
Yeah, at that size, a lot of the more execution type tools that I teach and help my clients implement and utilize, I think would be more helpful. Um, you're both, 2-person company. You're all wearing multiple hats. One of you's the chief everything officer, more than likely, and so a few things. One is start building an org chart for where you want to be over the next 6 to 12 months. If you're really wanting to plan for growth, that plan has to include the functions the organization is going to need, because they won't be the same as they are today. And what are the type of people that you need to hire? Because if you're expecting growth, you need to expect to hire people. And that's when things can get really messy, especially if those two people are co-founders, or one was a very early hire, right? You sort of got your own interpersonal dynamic going, but every time you keep adding another person, it just adds to the layer of complexity. I joke with people and say that, like business and leadership would be really easy if it weren't for all these people. So as you think about that, build your org chart, and you need to think about the major functions of your organization first and build it out. And, you have CEO, you have second in command, you have somebody who's in sales and marketing, somebody's in service, somebody's in the admin, functions, HR, finance, legal, all those things that you sort of partially pay attention to, if we're being honest, in early stages. And then is somebody doing like a marketer's job? Who's fulfilling all the work? How many different positions truly does it take for that? And then within each of those, give it a mission, like ultimately what it's there to do. Give it, the second thing is give it, 3 or 4 core processes or responsibilities that function carries out and is accountable for maintaining. And then give it 3 to 5 key performance indicators, metrics that you can measure, ideally weekly to monthly, that let you know it's on the right track. Now go back through and write your initials on how many seats you're actually sitting in. And when I do this with much smaller companies, like a 2-person, like a 3-person company, they start to go, oh, snap. This is why I feel so overwhelmed. I'm actually doing 5 different jobs, not just one. It's tough to tease that out in the early days, but it's crucial, because when you do that, then you can start to figure out a roadmap to backing yourself up out of that. And then the other ones are smaller. So meet weekly as a team to hold each other accountable to actions and solving problems. Don't just do it ad hoc. So be intentional and protect that time. And finally, pick 2 to 3 key projects every 90 days that will help you work on the business, focus on it. So if you do something this quarter, it makes next quarter easier. And before you know it, you've accomplished, 10 to 12 things over the course of a year that will make a huge difference. And you'll experience more peace and more growth at the same time.
All right. And one of the things that you brought up about having that org chart, I'm going to, I was sitting there as you're talking, I'm sitting there going, okay, even as a solopreneur, if you're by yourself, and maybe you're either just purely by yourself or you've got 1 or 2 virtual assistants, you're at that point, you really should be going through this process anyway. Because as you're talking, I'm sitting there kind of visualizing it in my head of what my org chart should look like. And I'm like, all right, my tree don't branch here. And
I'm going to borrow that.
Feel free, steal that one. But it is reality. And one of the things I think is really, really important with this is the power of doing that. Like, I'm going to go through and create that, because of the fact that then that puts me in a position to mentally be aware of what are the things that I need to start looking for, that I can bring somebody else in. Because we go through, like, I do a lot with delegation. I help my clients with it. And we know, in today's world, you can have virtual assistants all over the globe, which is great. But the exercise is generally make a list of everything you do and then circle all the things you don't want to do anymore. And that's a great start. However, what you're talking about is actually putting it in a place of, okay, these are actually individual roles, and maybe that role is being positioned by the same person 2 times for now. However, as you grow, you want to start thinking that way. And by having that visual up front, I can see the power of that, and how you can take, okay, right now I'm filling these 10 roles, but I'm going to take these 3 and that's where I'm going to put somebody else there. But
Mm-hmm.
eventually we're going to grow to a point where that's going to be 3 separate roles. And if you think early on, like I'm a big on that strategy, think of what's that 5,000 or 30,000 foot view look like,
Mm-hmm.
and then dial it down to the details. That,
Mm-hmm.
like, just hearing you explain that process, I'm like, okay, this is something that I need to be doing now, even though like it's me and an outsourced team, and even the outsourced team, they're great, love them to death, but there's a lot of roles that they can't do that I'm
Yep.
still doing. It's like, okay, these are the pieces that I need to be looking to hire for as soon as the next step is.
Yeah. And you bring up something that I didn't mention, which is you can use this for hiring fractional leadership, for part-time virtual assistants, for outsourced, like a team, like you mentioned. It's not just for full-time W-2 employees. Like, no, this is just the functions of your organization. It's got to get done. Now, who gets it done? It doesn't particularly matter, so to speak. But what does matter is you, if you're the business owner, the leader, the executive director, what have you, you need to be getting yourself and your people to the place where you are all each doing things that only you can do. Right. I heard Marcus Buckingham say this once. He's like, we talk about being well-rounded individuals. He goes, I actually don't think that. I think individuals should be sharp. Teams should be well-rounded.
Yeah, I love that. That is, it's funny you brought his name up because he's a name that I remember. I actually bought a couple of his books years ago, and I haven't heard from him for a while, which is kind of
Hmm.
interesting. Um,
We'll go look for him after the show.
yeah, we'll definitely have to. It's like, okay, wait a minute, that's somebody I should be paying attention to because yeah, I bought a program that was like a. I know I bought at least a book, and I know there's like a CD set or something that I've got
Mm.
of his
Ooh,
from
CD
for a
set.
long time ago. Yeah, I mean that shows how long ago because it was still CDs. I didn't say it was cassettes because I had those too. Uh, but you know, I love this process of that, and I think I learned this from Dan Sullivan
Hmm.
from Strategic Coach over the concept of focus on your strengths and outsource your weaknesses.
Who, not how.
Who, not how, exactly. And this was forever ago. This was way before
Mm-hmm.
he came out with those books.
Mm-hmm.
And it was when I heard that I was like, that makes so much sense because I grew up in the age of just do it. You're going to do all of it, and whatever the parts are, especially in school, whatever you're weak on, you got to spend more time to get through that piece. So
Mm-hmm.
then you do that whole well-rounded, like you're talking about. And as adults, it doesn't serve us very well, and especially as entrepreneurs, because we're trying to do all the things that we don't like doing. We suck at them. We shouldn't be doing them anyway. It makes life miserable.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you hate your business, and most of it's because you're doing stuff that you really weren't meant to be doing anyway.
Yeah. I frequently say it this way. I actually had a client come on board because he heard me say this on another podcast. But a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we jump out to build something that feels like it's a path to freedom. We end up feeling like we built our own prison cell. And that is one of the worst feelings in the world, because you can't point the finger at anybody else but yourself.
Yeah, so
There is a way
true.
out.
Yeah, well, and that's I can say that I've even suffered from that. Some of the things that I have done in my own business, I'm like, yeah, this is not what I was going for. This is not what I wanted. And
Right.
and I talk to so many other entrepreneurs. Like I have a client right now who is running through that process where they are going through and it's like, okay, I hate my business right now. Okay, so we need to figure out how do we fix that? How do we get you out of the stuff? Because a lot of it has to do with them trying to do too many things, and they're doing stuff they shouldn't be doing at all. Like not even as part of their business, not let alone whether they hire somebody.
Right.
And
Oh yeah, the that's where, whether it's random acts of growth or shiny object syndrome,
mhm.
that loss of focus, is, I think, one of the most detrimental things. But to be honest, when you're inside of it, it's tough to know if this was a thing worth focusing on or betting on or not, which is one reason why, like, as the companies grow up, I teach them a roadmap to articulate their vision, the type of culture they want to engineer, not just core values, like go beyond that. And then also, where do you need to be to set those mile markers? You talked about the 30,000 foot view. So I teach a document that helps guide all of that. And when you pair it with what I described earlier, it's a really potent combo of getting your vision clear, inviting people into it, treating them really well, and then seeing them execute on your vision, and you didn't have to do all of it. Like, man, that is just a wonderful feeling when you
Right.
get there. And then guess what? You get to get up and do it again tomorrow and do it again tomorrow. And now it really does feel like freedom instead of a prison cell.
Yeah. And it's funny. I had a stage in my business years ago where I had hit that, where a
Mm.
mass majority of my stuff was being outsourced. I had a team, I had other people working on different things. And I got up and I'm just like, I don't, this was too easy. And so what leads me to my question is, do you ever find that once you get working with somebody and you start getting these systems in place and you get
Mm-hmm.
get the right people in the right roles and you've got the leadership
Mm-hmm.
in place, that they almost feel like it's too easy and that it shouldn't be this easy, and they get confused and start self-sabotaging?
Um, I mean, I think some people will. Although, one of the things that I teach my teams is how to be radically candid with each other. So if you're familiar with Kim Scott's work with radical candor, is to call those things out. So I think if I did end up with a CEO or founder who decided, yeah, this I think I'm going to mess some things up, like, they would have a team call them out on it because they're less susceptible to that sort of destruction. That they can destroy the organization in other ways that are unique to them. But the fact that they can bring those things out in the open is good. But what I tend to find is that once they get up and they get the basics going, which can take 6 months to a year, some of that has to do with your level of commitment, things like that. But when teams and organizations really commit to this, now suddenly they start looking around like, okay, well, what do we want to do next? Because now, like, we've stopped feeling like we have to survive. Now it's about thriving. And I was actually just reading an email newsletter from a newer friend of mine, Jeff Scheffelbein at Undivided Life. He has a great email newsletter, writes great stuff about culture. He's also an excellent follow on LinkedIn. So he didn't pay me to endorse him, but I think highly of him. But he sent me a book last year called Tribal Leadership, and the highest level of teams are teams that compete against what's possible. And that phrase has stuck with me. Like, last year, I was training to do a couple of half Ironman triathlon races. And that stuck with me, is that I wasn't competing against the other people on the course with me, swim, bike, run. That's all great. And yes, I am a little competitive. So I did want to, like, pass a few people as I was running and biking. But I started thinking, like, I'm competing against what's possible for me. And that's what I hope and teach and encourage my teams to move towards, is start imagining what's possible with your team, with your vision for your audience. Because you can say you have competitors in the marketplace, and you do. But here's the thing. You are built and engineered, and you have a very specific vision to solve a very specific problem for a very specific group of people, whether you're for profit or you're a nonprofit. Those things apply. What's possible for you? And then when you start imagining that, well, now suddenly there is no end in sight to the things that you want to try, that you want to build, that you want to improve, even if it's like, let's do version 2.0 and then 3.0 instead of always doing something new. And that feels really liberating, really exciting. And that's when you get to position yourself as a thought leader in your particular space, and you get the chance to help a lot more people. Because even if you're selling things to people, you're still helping them. And at the end of the day, that's why anybody hires anyone, right? I hire you to solve a problem that if I could solve for myself, you and I would not be talking.
Very, very true. And it's, it's so funny because when you talk about that, that is the definition of entrepreneurship. We solve a
Mm-hmm.
problem for a profit. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the things that you said just now, I think is great because I think it was just this last week, I wrote an article about what competition and comparison really does to the mental state. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I heard to somebody that I actually have started following with a exercise program, with workout system, and
Mm-hmm.
his biggest thing is it's you versus you. As long as you
Yeah.
are pushing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter what I'm doing, doesn't matter what the guy next to you is doing. It's what is it that you are doing, and is that better than you did yesterday? That's all that
Yeah.
matters. And for me, that was great because I'm not an overly competitive kind of guy. I've always been self-contained in that arena. Is great example of it. I love archery is my hobby. I think you and I talked about this just a little bit the
Mm-hmm.
other day. And for me, it's great because if I go to a competition, it doesn't, like, somebody else shooting amazing that day does not affect me at all. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're not doing anything that's going to affect my shooting unless I let it mentally affect my shooting, but it doesn't
Right.
actually physically do it. So it's like I show up, I do the best I can, I stay focused, follow my shots, and what happens happens. And the same for them. And it's
Mm-hmm.
great from that
Mm-hmm.
standpoint because it's not like a lot of sports. You look at things like it's basketball, a great example. It's like, okay, somebody playing better one day, they're going to be in your way and it's going to affect you.
Right.
So it's kind of cool. And that's what I like about, like, what you said, is that if you can go through and think about it, is like, okay, this is what we're doing today. What can we do tomorrow to make this better? It
Mm-hmm.
changes the game completely.
Absolutely. Yeah. The was it Atomic Habits just talks
Mhm.
about like just being 1% better.
Yeah.
You don't have to transform overnight, just be 1% better.
Yep. Oh yeah, definitely. Awesome. So as we're starting to wrap up here, we got a couple questions for you. One of them is, I know you already shared a huge one with the org chart process, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
is like one of the very first things that people should be doing immediately. But if somebody could go through and figure out, it's like, okay, how can I remove a lot of this chaos as I grow my business
Mm-hmm.
and get that harmony that we're really looking for? What's one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that you would suggest that they do right away?
An easy one is on my website, kennylange.com/roadmap. So that what I was talking about, where you can get really clear on your vision, on your culture, and execution. What do you want to do in 3 years, this year, and the next 90 days? And I have a 15-minute video that'll walk you through some questions so you can like listen to the question, pause, go through it, and I give you a few traps to avoid falling into. But that's something that if you can get it down and make a crappy first draft of it, and if you have a business partner or even an initial hire, they usually feel like co-founders, have them go over that with you. Like, say, hey, does this seem like us? Does this seem true? Do I have a blind spot here? That's one of the first things you can do. If you're a little bit larger and you have a few more people, I have a free diagnostic on the website as well. It takes you less than 5 minutes, and it'll help you map out where those weaknesses might be, to where you'll feel the wins a little bit quicker. And if anybody needs help with that, reach out to me, ask me questions. Um, I just want people to have healthy, purpose-driven organizations that are actually doing what they set out to do. So I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Awesome. Cool. Go ahead and give that link for the roadmap one more time.
Yeah, kennylange.com, and it's Lange, Lange. That E will sneak up on you. /roadmap, and you can do it all one word. You can hyphenate it. I've set it up so it'll catch whichever way it works in
Right.
someone's mind. That diagnostic is the same thing, but /health score altogether. So both of those things are free. Interact, and then you can follow up with any questions you may have.
Awesome. Very cool. Okay. So as we are wrapping up now, one question I always like to ask people, this is the Meet Cool People show. So what does meet cool people mean to you?
Meet cool people to me means meeting people who are authentic and secure in who they are. They're people without pretense, and they don't need to force how awesome they are on you. I think you and I have commiserated about our negative networking experiences, and I shared that I just felt like it was people peacocking and telling me how awesome they were and pitch slapping me, for a couple hours. I would say the opposite of that is meeting cool people. And I know you weren't looking for this, such as yourself, but we also have, met with some other folks that they're just genuinely, authentically themselves, good and bad. But it allows for a healthy connection. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all wired for, right?
Very, very true. I love it. Thank you so much. So last thing, as we're wrapping up here, you already gave the link to the roadmap, but what are the other ways that people should get a hold of you? Should be connecting on LinkedIn or just at your website? What's the easiest way?
Yeah, LinkedIn is number one. I've made a personal commitment
You know the
to
feeling.
be far more active on there. So posting about a lot of the things that you and I were talking about. The other one, if you'll permit it, you can cut it out if you don't like it, but you're going to be a guest, so it would be to your own detriment. Is my podcast called How Leaders Think with Kenny Lange, and that's wherever fine podcasts are consumed, including YouTube. But those are LinkedIn and YouTube with the podcasts are two great ways to reach out and connect, or just learn a little bit more about some of the things that we talked about today.
Awesome. Love it, love it, love it. Cool. All right. Well, Kenny, thank you so much for coming and hanging out today. I appreciate you. We had a great time. And yeah, I knew we were going to have a good conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. All right. Everybody listening, get out there. Have an amazing rest of the day. As you know, if there's anything I can do to help you out, reach out and let me know. Take care. And that wraps up another Meet Cool People show. Now, if you like what you heard, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, or review so I can help introduce these amazing cool people to even more amazing cool people. And just remember, meeting cool people is just the beginning. You need to have a system in place to follow up with the amazing people that you meet. This is exactly what we do for our clients. If you'd like to see if my team and I can help you, go to followuprockstar.com and check out the case study video to see exactly how we're helping our clients turn casual connections into cash clients for life. Again, go to followuprockstar.com and we'll see how we can work together to turn you into a follow-up rockstar.